With her heart heavy and her future uncertain, she stood before the judge, a fierce determination igniting within her. The courtroom buzzed with tension as she recounted the betrayal, her voice trembling with a mix of pain and strength. Each word cut through the silence, leaving him wide-eyed and speechless. The tables turned in a dramatic twist of fate. The church radiated with a warm glow, the air heavy with the sweet scent of white roses. Guests leaned in, their whispers weaving through the space, marveling at the couple before them, their love a picture of perfection. At the altar, he stood in a tailored black suit, his grin wide and bright as he watched her approach. She floated down the aisle in a delicate lace dress, her hands trembling as they clutched the bouquet, each step a mix of joy and nerves, the air thick with anticipation. To everyone watching, it felt like the beginning of a breathtaking love story, filled with hope and longing. Yet, it was only she who felt the emptiness in his grip, the way his hand remained still, unresponsive in hers. She saw how his gaze drifted away, never truly meeting hers as they exchanged their vows. She dismissed it as mere nerves, whispering to herself that cold hands were simply the mark of a warm heart beating beneath the surface. "I swear to love you, honor you, and protect you," he had said, his voice smooth and convincing. But those words? They hung in the air, weightless, just like the countless lies he had spun before. How could she trust him now, when every promise felt like a shadow, flickering and uncertain? Just 2 months after exchanging vows, they found themselves standing in front of a quaint little house, the excitement bubbling between them like a shared secret. "Can you believe it's ours?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with hope. He smiled, a mix of disbelief and joy washing over him. "It feels like a dream," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. Together, they stepped inside, the air thick with possibilities, ready to fill each room with laughter and love. As she meticulously brushed the vibrant color onto the kitchen cabinets, a wave of frustration washed over her. Meanwhile, he lounged in the living room, lost in the virtual world of his games, his laughter echoing through the house. "It's just too stressful," he had said, but her heart ached with the weight of unspoken words and unshared burdens. As she carefully stacked bouquets and arranged centerpieces at the florist shop, a heavy sigh escaped her lips. "Another day, another bouquet," she murmured, her heart aching under the weight of responsibilities that felt all too heavy. "If only these flowers could lift my burdens, even for a moment." Each petal she touched seemed to echo her unspoken struggles, a silent witness to the drama unfolding in her life. Not once did he step into the kitchen to prepare dinner. He chuckled softly as she shared her dreams of launching a small online business, a playful smirk dancing on his lips. "That's adorable," he teased, his tone light yet dismissive, before adding, "Maybe you should concentrate on tidying up the house instead." The words hung in the air, a mix of jest and condescension, leaving her heart heavy with unspoken frustration. Yet, deep within her heart, she clung to her belief, refusing to let go. Perhaps, when the initial thrill faded, he would finally reveal the man he truly was beneath the surface. Perhaps love required a touch of patience, a gentle waiting, as if the heart itself needed time to unfold its deepest secrets. Yet, what she failed to grasp was that, in his heart, his vows had withered away the instant they left his lips. It began with whispers, a flicker of tension in the air. He stumbled through the door, the weight of the night clinging to him like a shadow. When she confronted him, her voice trembling with concern, he merely shrugged, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. "I don't like being interrogated," he shot back, the words laced with an edge that cut through the air between them. As she stirred the pot, the aroma of dinner wafting through the air, he leaned against the counter, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. "I'm not your child," he scoffed, his tone dripping with defiance, as if her efforts were nothing more than a challenge to his independence. "Quit treating me like I'm a child." "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling with regret. She felt the weight of her words, hesitant to become the voice that echoed with discontent. "I just want you to listen," she pleaded, her heart heavy with unspoken fears. Is that too much to ask? Yet, as the days turned into weeks, his indifference grew increasingly frigid, leaving a palpable chill in the air between them. He paused his messages throughout the day, leaving a silence that felt heavy and charged with unspoken words. He hardly lifted his gaze at the sound of her voice. The distance between them grew, an invisible thread that tightened with each passing moment, as if it were on the verge of breaking at any second. She tiptoed through the tension, her heart racing as she gauged his mood. Each word she considered weighed down by the fear of provoking yet another icy dismissal. As she stood there, the weight of his words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The night he canceled their anniversary dinner, a crack had formed in the foundation of their love, and she could feel the tremors of change beneath her feet. She adorned herself in her finest attire, the flickering candlelight casting soft shadows around the room. The aroma of his favorite dish filled the air, a tantalizing promise of the evening ahead. Her heart raced with anticipation, each passing moment thick with unspoken words and longing. He strolled in 2 hours late, the lingering scent of a woman's perfume clinging to him like a secret. "Don't make a big deal," he said, his voice flat, as if the weight of his words hung heavy in the air, begging for a reaction. Another day unfolds, the sun rising with a quiet promise, yet the air is thick with unspoken words and lingering glances. What lies beneath the surface? A heart beats, a mind races, and the world spins on, unaware of the storm brewing within. He sat there, staring at the untouched plate, a storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. The food lay cold and forgotten, a silent witness to his turmoil. He turned away, his gaze fixed on the ground, as if she were nothing more than a shadow in his world. She sat at the table, the fork poised in her hand, her gaze fixed on the untouched candles. Tears began to brim in her eyes, a silent storm brewing within her. That night, she lay awake beside him, his back turned to her, a storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. When had the love slipped away? Had it ever truly existed, or was it just a fleeting illusion? Her heart ached with the weight of unanswered questions, each one more painful than the last. As she stared at the test in her shaking hands, a whirlwind of emotions surged within her, each thought crashing against the other like waves in a storm. "Is this really happening?" she whispered, her heart racing, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. In the midst of chaos, a delicate smile flickered to life on her lips, a fleeting moment of light in the shadows. She envisioned delicate fingers reaching out, the sound of soft cries echoing in the night, and the warmth of bedtime stories whispered in the dark. Part of her stirred, igniting a fresh sense of purpose within her heart. Perhaps, just perhaps, this could mark the start of something truly remarkable. As the clock ticked closer to dinner, her heart raced with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. She fidgeted, glancing at the door, each sound sending a jolt of hope through her veins. He scrolled through his phone, oblivious to the world around him. With a trembling hand, she set the test down on the table, her heart racing. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her voice barely breaking the silence, yet heavy with the weight of her words. He kept his gaze fixed on the ground, as if the weight of the world pressed down on him, unwilling to meet her eyes just yet. As he finally looked up, his gaze was devoid of warmth, a stark and unyielding flatness that spoke volumes. "And what do you expect me to do with that?" he snapped, his phone hitting the table with a thud, as if she had shattered his entire night. Her eyes widened, disbelief washing over her like a tidal wave. I truly believed we would find happiness together, that you would desire this." "Oh, please," he scoffed, rolling his eyes as disbelief washed over his face. "What about you? Bringing a child into the world? How can you expect to manage the house when every little thing sends you into tears?" "How could you say that?" she gasped, her heart racing as his words landed with a stinging force, leaving her breathless and reeling. That night, he found himself in the guest room, a place that felt foreign yet strangely familiar. The silence wrapped around him like a heavy blanket, and as he lay there, thoughts swirled in his mind, each one more tumultuous than the last. He could almost hear the echoes of their last conversation, the words hanging in the air like unspoken promises. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. From that moment, he withdrew his touch entirely, leaving an aching silence between them. The warmth she had longed for slipped away, leaving her in a chilling void. Each morning, a chill crept into her bones, wrapping around her like a forgotten memory, whispering secrets of the night before. I'm not talking about baby names, he snapped, his voice tight with frustration. And I'm definitely not going to those doctor appointments. He didn't bother to inquire about her feelings. When she finally mustered the courage to bring it up, his response was cold and cutting. You got yourself into this. Don't hold your breath waiting for me to make it right. With each gentle flutter of the baby's kick, a flicker of joy ignited within her, yet simultaneously, a shadow of sorrow crept in, tugging at her heartstrings. It began with a whisper, a gentle stir in the air that hinted at something more beneath the surface. After he confided in her, a heavy silence fell between them. Her best friend, once a constant presence, began to fade away, the calls dwindling. You talk too much to people who don't respect our marriage, he had said, and those words echoed in her mind, twisting like a knife. Each ring of the phone became a reminder of what was lost, the laughter and shared secrets now replaced by an aching void. Her phone, as if possessed by some unseen force, had wiped away the text messages, leaving her staring at the screen in disbelief. Where were the words that once danced between them? The silence felt heavy, a weight pressing down on her chest, as she fought to suppress the swell of emotions rising within her. It was just a glitch, he insisted, his voice trembling with uncertainty. I swear that's all it was. Her family sensed the shift in her demeanor, the way she seemed to retreat into herself, a shadow of her former self. Each time they inquired, concern etched on their faces, she offered the same weary response. I'm just tired. But beneath those words lay a tempest of unspoken feelings, a silent plea for understanding that hung heavy in the air. And indeed, she was. She felt the weight of dismissal pressing down on her, each moment a reminder of her worth slipping through her fingers. Hope, once a flickering flame, now flickered dangerously low, threatening to extinguish completely. He stood firm, refusing to let anyone through the door without prior notice. So when her sister appeared unannounced one weekend, the air crackled with tension. He erupted, his voice rising in a storm of anger, accusing her of trampling over the boundaries he had so carefully set. After that fateful day, her sister vanished, leaving an aching silence in her wake. As the days passed, the weight of financial despair grew heavier, casting a shadow over every moment. What are we going to do? She whispered, her voice trembling with fear. He looked away, his heart aching, knowing that the walls were closing in around them. I don't know, he replied, the uncertainty hanging thick in the air, a palpable tension that threatened to unravel. Can we start saving for the baby? She asked, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and anxiety. Huh, that's rich, he exclaimed, laughter bubbling up from deep within him, his eyes sparkling with mischief. What is there to save? We're throwing away so much money on vitamins and checkups already, aren't we? I can take on extra shifts at the florist shop, she insisted, her voice trembling with determination. He shook his head, concern etched across his face. No, it's not safe for you to leave the house like this, he replied, his tone heavy with worry. As she stood in the grocery store, her heart raced when the cashier's voice cut through the air. I'm sorry, but your card has been declined. Confusion washed over her, a wave of disbelief crashing against her thoughts. It was then that the unsettling truth dawned on her. He had changed the bank account passwords, and she was left in the dark. He pressed $40 into her palm, his voice low and urgent. Make it last, he urged, a flicker of worry crossing his face. All you really need is something simple. That night, she stood before the mirror, her eyes deep with sorrow, hands shaking as they rested on her swelling belly. Where did you go? She whispered to the reflection, searching for the vibrant woman captured in the wedding photo, now a distant memory. Today was the day they celebrated his cousin's birthday, a moment filled with anticipation and excitement. I really don't want to go, she said, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Please, can't we just stay here? He stepped closer, his eyes intense. We have to. You know we can't stay hidden forever. A flicker of fear crossed her face, but she nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. I'm scared. He reached out, gently cupping her chin. I know, but we'll face it together. Don't humiliate me by behaving like a shattered soul. With a deep breath, she slipped into the maternity dress that clung to her form, the fabric stretching uncomfortably. Her hands trembled as she applied her makeup, each stroke a battle against her nerves. Finally, she stepped into the restaurant beside him, her heart racing, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. The room buzzed with laughter, the clinking of champagne flutes echoing like a joyful symphony. "Can you believe we made it this far?" she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I never thought we'd actually pull this off." He leaned closer, a grin spreading across his face. "Together, we can conquer anything," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. The air was electric, charged with the promise of what was yet to come. They gazed at her, a blend of sympathy and intrigue flickering in their eyes. As the question hung in the air, heavy with anticipation, she opened her mouth to speak, but before her words could escape, he interjected, his voice slicing through the tension like a knife. "I really hope she finds a way to be a good mom, don't you think?" "Can you believe that?" she exclaimed, her laughter ringing out like a melody. The room erupted with joy, each chuckle and giggle weaving together in a tapestry of shared delight. "I never saw that coming," he added, wiping a tear from his eye, the warmth of camaraderie enveloping them all. She managed to lift the corners of her mouth, yet the tremor in her hands betrayed her, quaking beneath the table. Later, as she attempted to slip away to the restroom, he seized her arm with a fierce grip, his voice low and tense. "Stop acting like you're special just because you're pregnant," he spat, the words laced with a raw intensity that hung heavy in the air. "You're hurting me," she whispered, her voice trembling with pain, but he remained indifferent, lost in his own world. As she rose from the table, a relative's smirk cut through the air, their voice dripping with disdain. "I suppose this is what happens when you marry beneath you." The words hung heavy, igniting a spark of tension in the room. She caught the sound, a whisper in the air that sent a shiver down her spine. Every single person felt it. Yet, in that moment of desperation, not a single soul stepped forward to defend her. In the restroom, she gazed at her reflection, her heart heavy, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. She felt a soft flutter within her, a gentle reminder of the life growing inside her. It was a tender moment, filled with anticipation and warmth. That was all she could muster, a single, fragile reply that hung in the air, heavy with unspoken feelings. The room was silent, yet within her, a stirring began to take root, a whisper of something profound waiting to unfold. It hovered just beneath the surface, a simmering tension waiting to erupt, but for now, it was merely a whisper of what was to come. On that still Tuesday morning, she stood before the fridge, her heart racing as she pinned the ultrasound picture in place. The tiny silhouette, suspended in a vast expanse of darkness, seemed to pulse with life, a whisper of hope and anticipation filling the air around her. She longed to catch him off guard, to weave a tender moment that whispered of reality, a reminder that there was still time to nurture their bond. As he stepped through the door, his eyes barely lingered on it. With a heavy sigh, he commanded, "Take that down. It feels like a heavy cloud hanging over me, suffocating and relentless." She stood there, her heart racing, clutching the plate of food she had kept warm for hours, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air between them. "Why won't you even make an effort to be part of this? What do you really want?" she asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. His response cut through the air, a quick and biting remark, as if the weight of unasked questions hung heavily between us. "It was you who did that." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy, wrapping around them like a shroud of smoke, each syllable igniting a spark of tension that crackled between them. As the moonlight spilled through the window, she pressed her face into the softness of her pillow, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. In the distance, his steady snoring filled the air, a stark reminder of the weight of his indifference. A week later, she stumbled upon him in the garage, his hands trembling as he ripped apart a folder, the sound of paper tearing echoing the turmoil within him. "What is it?" she pressed, her voice trembling with curiosity. He met her gaze, silence hanging heavily between them, a storm of unspoken words swirling in the air. It was only after he had walked out the door, the sound of his footsteps fading into the distance, that she felt the weight of panic settle in her chest. Her heart raced as she frantically searched the room, her breath hitching with each passing moment. The prenatal documents, appointment schedules, insurance details were nowhere to be found. A wave of dread washed over her, tightening its grip as she realized the gravity of what was lost. Everything lay in tatters. She sank onto the cold garage floor, a heap of paper cradled in her lap, the edges sharp and unforgiving like 1,000 tiny blades ready to cut through the silence. She felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her, rendering her voice silent, even as the urge to scream clawed at her throat. She stood there, her heart heavy, unable to muster the words to question him. Why? The silence between them screamed louder than any answer she could have imagined. She felt it deep within her, a stirring that was neither forgetfulness nor mere frustration. It was all intentional, every move calculated, every glance loaded with meaning. The man she had vowed to love sought to obliterate the very evidence of their shared existence, as if their memories were mere shadows he could sweep away. And for the first time, she held back the tears, her heart pounding in her chest as a whirlwind of emotions swirled within her. Her gaze lingered on the shattered pieces, a storm of emotions swirling within her. In that moment of stillness, she vowed silently, a fierce determination igniting in her heart. This would be the final time she allowed him to strip her of anything without a battle. "I can't keep pretending," he finally said, his voice trembling as he looked into her eyes. She felt the weight of his words settle heavily in the room, a storm brewing in the silence that followed. 7 months pregnant, and the air between them crackled with unspoken fears and hopes, each heartbeat echoing the tension that had lingered far too long. "We need to talk." "I'm done," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper as he hurled the duffel bag into the hallway, the thud echoing like a final farewell. She stood there, heart racing, as he swept through the house, snatching up clothes, keys, and his phone charger, each movement charged with urgency. "There are no apologies here." Without a moment's pause, "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of concern and curiosity, her eyes searching his for answers that seemed just out of reach. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath, not pleading, just weary from the weight of it all. His gaze finally met hers after days of silence, and with a heavy heart, he whispered, "Anywhere that isn't here." And then, with a heavy heart, he turned away, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air between them. Silence filled the room, heavy and thick. The air crackled with unspoken words, each person caught in their own whirlwind of thoughts. "Why didn't you tell me?" She finally broke the stillness, her voice trembling with a mix of hurt and anger. He looked away, guilt etched across his face. "I thought it was for the best," he murmured, barely above a whisper. The tension hung between them, a palpable force, as emotions swirled like a storm ready to erupt. There was no last exchange of words. As the door clicked shut, it felt like the final page of a story she wished she could rewrite, a moment heavy with unspoken words and lingering emotions. She sank into the living room couch, her swollen feet resting on a pillow, her gaze fixed on the door. Hours passed, each tick of the clock echoing her hope that he might return, that he would walk through that door and declare it all a mistake. Yet, as the clock struck midnight, an eerie stillness enveloped her, the silence of her phone echoing louder than any words could. She stared at the screen, heart racing, waiting for a sign that never came. The following morning, she awoke to find his name had vanished from their shared bank account, leaving a hollow ache in her chest. She reached for her phone, her heart racing, only to be met with the harsh reality of a blocked number. Desperation clawed at her as she stared at the screen, the silence echoing louder than any words she could have spoken. She opened the closet door, her heart racing as she took in the sight of its half-empty shelves. A wave of nostalgia washed over her, each vacant space echoing memories long forgotten. His toothbrush, once a daily companion, now vanished. The coffee mug that held his favorite brew, cherished and warm, has disappeared without a trace. The baby kicked, a soft, gentle flutter beneath her ribs, as if asking, "Where did he go?" Her silence hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Just a belly brimming with life, an echoing house, and a heart stretched so thin it barely pulsed with existence. As she hurried toward the free clinic downtown, a sudden haze enveloped her sight, casting shadows over her path. Initially, she brushed it off as mere exhaustion, but deep down, a nagging feeling began to stir within her. The walk had stretched on endlessly, each step a reminder of her swollen feet and the ache that radiated through her back, a heavy burden she carried in more ways than one. "I can't believe how far we've come," she murmured, glancing at him with a mix of exhaustion and determination. "Do you think we'll make it?" Her voice trembled slightly, revealing the depth of her weariness. He reached out, taking her hand in his grip firm yet gentle. "We will," he assured her, his eyes filled with unwavering resolve. Just a little further. The weight of their journey hung in the air, thick with unspoken fears and hopes, as they pressed on together, hearts intertwined in the struggle. But as she stepped onto the curb, the world around her spun, a dizzying blur of colors and sounds that seemed to mock her very existence. As the honk of a car pierced the air, distant voices echoed around her, and in that moment, her body betrayed her, collapsing under the weight of it all. She crashed onto the pavement, gasping as her arm instinctively wrapped around her belly, a surge of panic flooding her senses. As her eyelids fluttered open, a stark white ceiling came into view, and the sterile scent of antiseptic filled her senses. She felt the cool touch of wires wrapped around her wrists, their presence a reminder of her fragility. The rhythmic beeping of machines pulsed in the air, each sound a heartbeat echoing her own uncertainty. A nurse leaned closer, her voice soft yet firm. "You've fainted from sheer exhaustion and overwhelming stress. You really need to rest," she said, her voice laced with concern. "I can see it in your eyes. You're pushing yourself too hard." The weight of her words hung in the air, thick with unspoken worry. "Please, just take a moment for yourself." Her gaze softened, revealing the depth of her care. "You deserve it. Both of you," standing there, the tension thick in the air, eyes locked in a silent battle. What unspoken words linger between you? The weight of the moment hangs heavy, emotions swirling like a storm ready to break. Can you feel it? The drama unfolding, the heartbeats echoing in the silence. "It's just you two." And as she lowered her hand to her belly, a sudden jolt of life surged within her, and she gasped, feeling the unmistakable kick. Her heart raced, a mix of joy and anticipation flooding her senses. Relief surged through her chest, a fleeting warmth that was swiftly overshadowed by a creeping dread. "How am I supposed to rest?" she whispered, her voice trembling with uncertainty. With no job to anchor her, no savings to fall back on, and no family within reach, she felt the weight of solitude pressing down on her heart. The nurse paused, her eyes flickering with uncertainty, before finally mustering the courage to ask, "Is there anyone you would like me to call?" "No," she whispered, her voice trembling, tears spilling down her cheeks as she shook her head in disbelief. "No one," she whispered, her voice trembling with unspoken pain. As she stepped out of the hospital, a mix of relief and anxiety washed over her. "You need to rest," the doctor had said, his voice firm yet laced with concern. "If you don't take care of yourself, the baby might arrive sooner than expected." She clutched the discharge papers tightly, the weight of his words echoing in her mind. "I will," she whispered to herself, determination flickering in her chest, but doubt lingered like a shadow. What if she couldn't? What if she failed to protect the tiny life growing inside her? Yet, she found herself utterly alone, with no one to extend a hand, and the weight of empty pockets pressing down on her heart, leaving her without the means for delivery or supplies. "I can't breathe in here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's like the walls are closing in on me." Tears welled in her eyes as she glanced around, searching for a way out. Is there really no escape? Yet, she pressed on, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision, knowing there was no turning back. As the contractions gripped her that night, a wave of panic washed over her. They were mild, yet their chill pierced through her, halting her in her tracks. She perched on the edge of the bed, her breath shallow and ragged as she fought through the waves of pain, her fingers clutching the sheets like a lifeline. With trembling fingers, she reached for her phone, her heart racing as anticipation coursed through her veins. Her fingers trembled as they lingered above his name, a haunting reminder still etched in her contacts, despite all that had transpired between them. With a moment's pause, she finally reached out and tapped it, her heart racing in anticipation. The phone sat silent, the screen dark, as if holding its breath, waiting for a sound that never came. Her heart sank as the call went straight to voicemail, the silence stretching out like an unspoken promise hanging in the air. Her heart pounded in her chest as she made another attempt, only to face the same disheartening outcome. With a heart racing and breath quickening, she typed frantically, "I think I'm in labor." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, filled with a mix of fear and anticipation. "Please, just tell me what to do," she pleaded, her voice trembling with urgency, eyes wide with desperation. Her eyes were glued to the screen, heart racing as she waited for those 3 elusive dots to finally materialize. Silence hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. It was as if the world held its breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the stillness. A heartbeat echoed in the void, a reminder of the emotions swirling just beneath the surface, yearning to be expressed. But still, there was nothing. No words, no sounds, just an aching emptiness that filled the space between them. The response arrived with the dawn, heavy with anticipation. It was merely a single line, yet it held the weight of 1,000 unspoken words, a fragile thread woven through the fabric of their lives, pulsing with the tension of what could have been. "Just don't reach out to me anymore. That's where your struggle lies." She clutched the paper, her eyes scanning the words again and again, a chill creeping through her chest, tightening like a vice. "How could this happen?" she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible, filled with disbelief and sorrow. She sat at the kitchen table, her fingers trembling as they rested on her stomach, the phone pressed to her ear. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice thick with hurt and disbelief. Yet, in that heavy silence, her voice faded into the void, unheard and unacknowledged. That morning, she stood at the counter, her hands shaking as she brewed the tea, forcing a smile that masked the exhaustion deep within her. "Just a little longer," she whispered to herself, clinging to the illusion of strength. Yet, beneath the surface, a realization was taking root, one she had dreaded for what felt like an eternity. She felt the weight of solitude pressing down on her, a heavy cloak of despair. The man who was meant to be her rock had not only walked away, but had done so with a cruel intent, leaving her to grapple with the sting of his words that cut deeper than any blade. "You're nothing without me," he had said, and those words echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder of her perceived inadequacies. 2 days later, she found herself back at the hospital, not due to the relentless grip of contractions, but driven by a gnawing emptiness in her stomach that had lingered for nearly 48 hours. Her face was ashen, lips chapped and trembling. The nurse, concern etched on her brow, leaned closer and asked, "Where's the father?" Silence hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. She simply stared, her lips pressed together, a storm of thoughts swirling behind her eyes, but no words escaped her. The weight of the moment was palpable, a tension that crackled like electricity between them. With a heavy heart, she slowly turned her face toward the wall, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. A few hours later, the same nurse returned, a steaming bowl of soup and warm bread in hand. She settled beside her, the silence heavy between them, each moment stretching with unspoken words and shared understanding. After a moment of silence, the nurse leaned in, her voice soft yet probing. "Would you like to talk to someone? Could it be a legal counselor, perhaps?" The words lingered, a silent beckoning that stirred the heart. Her eyes widened in surprise, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face. "What makes you think I would require a lawyer? What do you really want?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and fear. "You see," the nurse murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, "what he did to you may not be merely an act of cruelty. You know, it could be illegal," she said, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "What if we get caught?" That night, a woman clad in a gray blazer entered her hospital room, the air thick with unspoken tension. "I'm a legal advocate," she said, her voice steady yet filled with an undercurrent of passion. "I fight for women who have been left behind during their most vulnerable moments." Her eyes sparkled with determination, revealing the weight of the stories she carried within her heart. She leaned in, her eyes locked onto his, absorbing every word. When he finally fell silent, she took a breath, her voice steady yet filled with warmth. "You have more rights than you think," she said, her tone a gentle reminder of the strength within him. "You really have a compelling argument," she said, her eyes narrowing as she leaned in closer, the tension thickening in the air. For the first time in months, someone had dared to call her strong, and the weight of the word hung in the air, igniting a flicker of something deep within her. A flicker of warmth ignited within her chest, an unfamiliar sensation that whispered of hope. As she stood there, uncertainty swirling around her like a tempest, a flicker of hope ignited within her. "I may not know what lies ahead," she whispered to herself, "but at least I finally have a path to follow." Her heart raced, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins, as she took a deep breath and stepped forward into the unknown. She had reached her limit, no longer willing to wait, to ask, or to plead. The clash had only just ignited, tension crackling in the air like a live wire. The legal advocate arrived the following morning, clutching a folder tightly, their voice steady yet resolute, as if preparing to unveil a storm of truths. She spoke passionately about the heart-wrenching reality of abandonment during pregnancy, framing it as a profound neglect. Her voice trembled as she emphasized the possibility of enforcing financial support retroactively, a lifeline for those left in the shadows. Every word fell heavy, like stones carefully placed to construct a foundation beneath her shattered reality. For the first time, she stood tall, a fire igniting within her, no longer shackled by the weight of her past. She felt as if she were carrying the weight of a heavy burden, a case filled with secrets and untold stories. The word ignited a spark within her, awakening a long-dormant sense of dignity that surged with emotion. Back home, her hands shook as she opened her laptop, a whirlwind of thoughts swirling in her mind. "I have to get this right," she whispered to herself, determination mingling with fear. Each file she sorted felt like a piece of her heart laid bare, the weight of her emotions pressing down on her as she fought to find clarity amidst the chaos. Images of the house loomed large, each one a silent witness to their past. Text messages dripped with his scorn, mocking her in moments of vulnerability. Emails flashed with bank notifications, reminders of debts he left unpaid. And there were the receipts from hospital visits, stark evidence of his absence when she needed him most, a betrayal etched in every line. It had transcended the need for revenge. It was a battle for survival, a desperate quest for justice that ignited the very core of their beings. Each document transformed into a solid brick, fortifying the walls of her emotional fortress, a silent testament to her struggles and triumphs. As the clock ticked into the late hours, she found herself surrounded by scattered papers, each one a fragment of her past. She printed, she sorted, and with every memory that surfaced, a wave of emotion washed over her, pulling her deeper into the night. She could still feel the weight of those nights, the way he entered the room, the scent of his cologne lingering in the air like an unspoken promise. Each time, her heart raced, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling within her. What secrets did that fragrance hold? What stories were hidden beneath the surface of his smile? With each passing moment, he brushed aside her fears, his indifference cutting through the air like a knife. Each biting remark cut deep, tearing away at her sense of self, leaving her raw and exposed. Now, she was capturing every moment, not as a means of punishment, but as a shield for the fragile child within her. She had reached her limit, the silence no longer an option. Her days twisted and turned, each moment heavy with unspoken words and lingering glances. The mornings wrapped her in the comforting embrace of warm oatmeal and vitamins, a gentle start to the day. But as the sun climbed higher, her afternoons transformed into a battleground of legal texts. She pored over custody laws, her highlighter dancing across the pages, marking phrases like co-parenting rights and spousal abandonment, each term echoing with the weight of her reality. Every week, Gloria's lawyer, both sharp and kind, would come to see her, bringing a flicker of hope amidst the shadows of uncertainty. Gloria always arrived with a stack of papers clutched tightly in her hands, her voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of tension. "He believes you won't stand your ground," she remarked, her fingers delicately adjusting her glasses, a hint of defiance flickering in her eyes. "We will show him just how mistaken he is." The due date for the baby loomed ever closer, a ticking clock echoing in the background, while the first court filing approached with an unsettling urgency. She stood there, her heart racing, devoid of a suit or a briefcase. Yet she clutched something far more powerful, her truth. It pulsed within her, a fierce flame igniting her spirit, ready to confront the world. On those long, silent nights, she found herself weeping into her pillow, not out of sorrow, but from the heavy burden she bore, both in her body and deep within her heart. "Why is it so hard?" she whispered to the darkness, her voice trembling with the weight of unspoken fears. Each morning, she rose with a heavy heart, standing before the mirror, her voice barely a whisper as she repeated, "You're not broken." The words hung in the air, a fragile lifeline in the silence of her struggle. Your ascent is undeniable. She let the makeup fade away, a silent rebellion against the mirror that once dictated her worth. She finally let the facade crumble, revealing the turmoil beneath the surface. Instead, she clung to her strength, battling through each day as it came, her heart a storm of determination. Gloria leaned in closer, her voice steady yet filled with urgency. "You have to remember," she said, "the courts don't just look at your income. They see your integrity, your effort, and your resilience. It's all part of the story." The weight of her words hung in the air, charged with emotion, as she searched for a flicker of understanding in her eyes. And she possessed all three in abundance. The old version of her, the one who lingered in silence, hesitant and unsure, was slipping away like shadows at dusk. A woman with a fierce determination was emerging, her purpose igniting a fire within her. She was more than a mother. She was a warrior, battling against the odds with every breath she took. The night she went into labor, she found herself alone once more, yet fear had no place in her heart. She had packed her hospital bag 2 weeks ago, each item chosen with meticulous care, anticipation thrumming in her chest. As the contractions surged with a fierce intensity, she drew in a deep breath, her heart racing, and picked up the phone, her voice steady yet laced with urgency as she called for the ambulance. Her voice held no trace of panic. It was filled with unwavering resolve. Hours later, she cradled her baby girl for the first time, the little one so tiny and warm, her wide, curious eyes blinking up at her, filled with wonder and innocence. "Look at you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "You're perfect." The room was thick with unspoken feelings, each heartbeat echoing the depth of their newfound bond. She named her Hope, for that was the essence this child had come to embody. It stands not as a reminder of what was lost, but as a testament to the strength that endures. She held her breath, the nurse's question hanging in the air like a storm cloud, but no tears fell. Instead, a heavy silence enveloped her, a tumult of emotions swirling just beneath the surface. "It's just us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it hung in the air, heavy with unspoken feelings. Hope radiated vitality. A heartbeat thudded with intensity, a soft wail broke the silence, and tiny fingers wrapped around her mother's thumb, as if they had found their rightful place at last. They noticed the quiet strength in her posture, their eyes filled with a gentle admiration that spoke volumes, yet words remained unspoken between them. As the doors swung open, Gloria stood waiting at the entrance, her heart racing with anticipation. Without uttering many words, she stepped in to assist, lifting the car seat with a gentle determination. "Let's get him settled," she urged, her voice laced with an unspoken urgency. And with that, a new chapter unfolded, not merely in the realm of motherhood, but in the fervent quest for accountability. "Can you believe this is happening?" she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. "I never thought I'd find myself here." The weight of her words hung in the air, thick with emotion, as she took a deep breath, ready to embrace the challenges ahead. The apartment was small, yet it embraced you with the comforting sense of lavender and baby powder, wrapping you in a warm, nostalgic hug. In the dim light of the cramped bedroom, she breathed life into the space, turning it into a nursery corner filled with warmth. Hand-me-down blankets lay softly across the borrowed furniture, each piece whispering stories of love and care. Above, a paper mobile she crafted herself danced gently, casting shadows that seemed to sway with the promise of new beginnings. Hope drifted into a deep slumber, the day slipping away like a forgotten dream. As night enveloped her, the stillness was punctuated by soft lullabies and the gentle murmur of promises, each one a tender vow of a brighter tomorrow. As she fed her daughter, the soft sounds of cooing filled the room, and with each gentle change of the diaper, she felt the weight of motherhood settle deeper in her heart. Rocking her little one to sleep, she whispered secrets into the night, her thoughts drifting to Gloria, their bond unbroken even in the chaos of the moment. "I just sent you the emails," she said, her voice tinged with urgency. "And the updates, did you see them? They're crucial." She paused, her eyes scanning the room, searching for a sign of understanding. "I've also scanned the documents. They're all ready for you." The weight of her words hung in the air, thick with anticipation. "It's happening," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and anxiety. "I can feel it, even if it's just a tiny step." Her heart raced as she glanced at the papers scattered across the table, each one a promise of progress. "But will it be enough?" she added, her eyes searching for reassurance in the silence that followed. With a heavy heart, she parted with her engagement ring, the glimmering symbol of love now exchanged for the necessities of motherhood, diapers and formula. Each tear that fell felt like a sacrifice, a poignant reminder of the dreams she once held close. The wedding dress she had lovingly tucked away in her hope chest now lay bare before the world, its delicate fabric glimmering under the harsh light of the screen, marked for a swift departure from her life. She meticulously stripped away every item from her past, each one a thread that tethered him to her heart, leaving only the raw ache of absence behind. She craved the space, but even more, she longed for the tranquility that seemed just out of reach. With a determined glint in her eye, she dove into the world of online surveys, hoping to scrape together some pocket change. Each application to remote jobs felt like a leap of faith, while her fingers danced across the keyboard, crafting heartfelt blog posts for parenting websites, pouring her soul into every word. With each passing day, she was crafting a life, one that diverged from her original dreams, yet blossomed into something she could hold close to her heart. In the stillness of the night, as shadows danced around them and her baby nestled close, she leaned down, her voice barely a breath. "One day, my love, you'll understand why we had to endure this." Her heart ached with the weight of unspoken truths, the air thick with emotion. It slipped into her mailbox, a plain white envelope nestled between the mundane shuffle of coupons and bills, its presence igniting a flicker of curiosity in her chest. As she slowly pried it open, her hands trembled, not out of fear, but from a rush of eager anticipation that coursed through her veins. The document lay before her, stark and unyielding, a court summons, a summons that bore her name as the petitioner for a paternity and custody hearing. Her heart raced, a storm of emotions swirling within her as she grasped the weight of what this meant. With trembling hands, she pored over the words again and again, each line pulling at her heartstrings, before finally setting it down with care on the kitchen table, right next to Hope's pacifier, a silent witness to the weight of her emotions. Later that day, Gloria's voice broke through the silence, her tone laced with urgency. "It's happening," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and excitement. "This is your moment," she said, her voice trembling with anticipation. "Now is the time to let your voice ring out, to be truly heard." The weight of her words hung in the air, charged with emotion, as she stepped closer, eyes locked on his. "Don't hold back. Speak your truth." The date was finally set, the air thick with anticipation. Just 3 weeks left. Just the right amount of time to gather her thoughts, yet tantalizingly near to set her heart racing. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she spread out every file she had meticulously gathered, her heart racing with anticipation and a hint of dread. Printed text messages lay scattered, each one a silent scream of his absence. Screenshots of his disappearance stood like sentinels, guarding the truth of his betrayal. Evidence of financial abandonment loomed heavy, a weight she could no longer bear. Proof of her medical visits whispered tales of her struggle, each document a testament to her resilience in the face of despair. She felt a rush of anticipation at the thought of seeing him again, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. She had witnessed the darkest corners of his soul, and now, those shadows held no sway over her heart. What terrified her most was the thought of being misunderstood, the chilling fear that the system would not believe her at all. "Trust me," Gloria said, her voice steady yet filled with conviction. "The case is stronger than you think." Her eyes locked onto hers, a flicker of determination igniting the air between them. "He might have walked out," she declared, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and determination. "But we're going to ensure he remembers the cost of turning his back on us." With a heavy heart, she rehearsed her words, each syllable laced with the weight of her intentions. She wasn't aiming to wound him. Rather, she was fiercely guarding the most precious thing in her life, her daughter's future. The stakes were high, and the air crackled with unspoken tension. Upon receiving the court summons, he remained silent, offering no call, no apology, and not a single question about the why of it all. He leaned back, a self-satisfied grin spreading across his face as he snapped a photo for social media. One hand cradled a drink, the other danced over the keyboard. "Some people just don't know when to move on," he typed, the words dripping with disdain. With a playful smirk, he bantered with his friends in the comments, teasingly labeling her as a bitter ex, reveling in the role of the victim. Whispers reached her ears, carried by a lingering shadow of someone who still clung to his presence. Silence hung in the air, heavy and thick, as she turned away, her lips pressed tightly together, refusing to utter a single word. With a swift motion, she slid the printed copy of that post into her file, a hint of determination flickering in her eyes. It was more than mere arrogance. It was a tempest of pride that swirled within him, igniting a fire that demanded to be acknowledged. The air crackled with tension, and the weight of unspoken words hung heavily between them, begging for release. It was undeniable, a stark revelation of his utter lack of remorse. He stood there, a proud figure, seemingly untouched by the chaos he had wrought, as if the consequences of his actions were mere shadows that danced around him, never truly reaching his heart. A few days later, he finally responded, his voice steady yet laced with tension, as he submitted the official court filing through his lawyer. "I'm not the father," he shot back, his voice laced with frustration. "You're just trying to pull me into your mess for money. You knew from the start that I didn't want any kids." The tension hung thick in the air, each word a dagger, cutting deeper into the fragile fabric of their relationship. Her heart had grown numb to the cruel, empty words, and she faced them now without flinching. With a heavy heart, she carefully marked the most damaging phrases, her fingers trembling slightly as she sent them off to Gloria, each word a weighty reminder of the pain they carried. "He's digging his own grave," the lawyer said, a hint of concern lacing his voice. "Let's allow him to continue on his path." As she shut her laptop, a soft sigh escaped her lips, the quiet of the house wrapping around her like a warm blanket. In the next room, the gentle rise and fall of her baby's breath filled the air, a soothing reminder of the life she had created. She paused, heart swelling with a mix of love and exhaustion, the weight of the day pressing down on her shoulders. The man who had abandoned her, leaving her with a child and shattered dreams, still treated it all as if it were some twisted game. But soon, he would discover that she had transformed into someone entirely different from the woman he had once left behind. The weeks leading up to the hearing were a whirlwind of frantic preparations, each moment heavy with anticipation and anxiety. Conversations buzzed with urgency, emotions flaring as everyone grappled with the weight of what was to come. "Just take a deep breath and remember to speak clearly," Gloria urged, her voice steady yet encouraging. "You've got this. When they ask you something, pause for a moment, gather your thoughts, and then respond with confidence." They pored over each document, their brows furrowed in concentration, voices rising and falling as they debated every detail, determined not to let a single oversight slip through their fingers. As darkness enveloped the house and hope drifted into slumber, she found herself alone at the kitchen table, her voice breaking the silence. What if he says this? She pondered, her heart racing. Or that? Each imagined insult cut deeper, igniting a storm of emotions within her as she wrestled with the weight of her thoughts, the tension thick in the air. She stood there, her heart racing, not ready to confront him with fury. With determination in her eyes, she readied herself to confront him, armed with a barrage of facts that could pierce through his defenses. Her story unfolded with a seamless flow, yet it lacked the vibrant dramatics that could stir the heart. It was simply the raw essence of truth. In the courtroom, the truth held a weight that could shift the very air, especially when it was wielded with precision and poise. With a determined glint in her eye, she slipped into the neighbor's blazer, its fabric whispering secrets of borrowed confidence. As she clicked the printer, the whirring sound filled the room, each fresh copy of evidence emerging like a heartbeat, pulsing with the weight of her resolve. She rehearsed each step, envisioning herself striding boldly into the courthouse, yet in the solitude of her room, her knees quaked with uncertainty. Her daughter deserved a mother who stood tall, radiating strength, not one who shrank away in the shadows. As the court date loomed closer, an unexpected calm washed over her, settling deep within her chest. She took a breath, the weight of anticipation mingling with a flicker of hope. "I can do this," she whispered to herself, her voice barely breaking the silence of her thoughts. The tension in the air was palpable, yet somehow, she found a strange comfort in the chaos surrounding her. It wasn't arrogance, not at all. It was a fierce conviction, a burning belief that ignited every word spoken, every glance exchanged. The air crackled with tension, emotions swirling like a tempest, each heartbeat echoing the weight of unspoken truths. In that moment, the world faded away, leaving only the raw intensity of their connection. In that moment, everything became clear. Regardless of the price tag on his lawyer, regardless of the self-satisfied smirk that danced on his lips from across the room, he was powerless to erase the weight of his actions. He could choose to deceive, but this time, she would not hold her tongue. This time, someone would truly hear her. The weight of her words hung in the air, thick with anticipation, as she prepared to bare her soul. Would they understand the depth of her pain? Would they see the fire in her heart? She could feel the tension crackling around her, a storm of emotions ready to erupt. The courtroom enveloped her in an unexpected chill, the polished wood gleaming under the harsh lights. High ceilings loomed above, and the air was thick with the hushed murmurs of others, each whisper a reminder of the weight of the moment. He stepped in, the clock ticking loudly in the silence, his suit a stark contrast to the weight of his absence. How could he look so polished when he hadn't contributed a single cent to the life he had helped create? As their gazes locked, a smirk curled on his lips, a silent declaration that she was merely an annoyance he was ready to dismiss. As his lawyer leaned in, a conspiratorial whisper slipped from their lips, and he couldn't help but let out a soft chuckle, the tension in the air momentarily lifting. She stood there, her expression unreadable, as silence enveloped the moment. She clutched Hope's pacifier tightly, a small symbol of her resolve, anchoring her in the whirlwind of emotions that swirled around her as she stood there. She had no intention of seeking revenge. She stood resolute, her heart pounding with the weight of her daughter's unspoken needs, ready to fight for the recognition that had long been denied. As the judge called their names, she rose, each step deliberate, masking the tempest swirling within her heart. The bailiff raised his hand, swearing her in, and there stood Gloria, a steadfast presence beside her, like an unwavering shield against the storm of uncertainty. With a commanding presence, his lawyer began, portraying him as a man ensnared by a woman he scarcely recognized, a victim of manipulation thrust into the role of fatherhood against his will. The words pierced her heart, yet she remained silent, holding back the urge to respond. She stood there, heart racing, her breath hitching in her throat as the seconds stretched into eternity. The world around her faded, leaving only the weight of anticipation hanging in the air. Would he come? Would he even care? Each tick of the clock echoed in her mind, a relentless reminder of her longing. She waited, for when her moment arrived, she would remain silent, her heart heavy with unspoken feelings. She would voice her thoughts, each word laced with conviction. And in that moment, the silence in the courtroom roared, drowning out every word he had ever uttered. As she stood to address the room, a heavy silence fell over the courtroom, anticipation hanging in the air like a thick fog. Gloria leaned in, her eyes searching for the truth. "Tell me," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. "What was it like to feel that abandonment?" "I understand your concerns," she said, her voice steady. Yet there was an intensity in her gaze that hinted at the storm beneath her composed exterior. "But let me explain." She recounted the moment he walked away, the suffocating silence of the financial freeze, the unanswered calls that echoed in her mind, and the night she crumpled to the floor, overwhelmed by sheer exhaustion. She held back the tears, her heart heavy with unspoken words. She held her ground, unwavering. Her words flowed from her heart, each one a vivid recollection, bursting with the weight of emotion. "Objection!" His lawyer interjected sharply, eyes narrowing as he pointed a finger at her. "You're just trying to dramatize this situation." With a single, piercing glance, the judge brought him to an abrupt silence, the weight of unspoken authority hanging in the air. With a steady hand, Gloria approached the judge, her heart racing as she presented the folder, a silent plea for understanding etched across her face. Within the confines of the room lay bank records, messages dated with intention, and screenshots capturing his social media taunts, each one a dagger aimed at her heart. The judge lingered over each word, the silence stretching like a taut string, and an icy tension settled over the room. And just like that, the unexpected twist unraveled before their eyes, leaving everyone breathless. Gloria's voice trembled as she called forth the witness, the hospital nurse who had been there, tending to her in the chaos of her collapse. The nurse stepped up to the stand, her voice trembling slightly as she began to share her observations. "I saw her there, alone," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "No emergency contact, no one to turn to for help. She begged me to call him, but he just wouldn't answer." The weight of her words hung in the air, thick with unspoken pain and desperation. The nurse met his gaze, her voice trembling as she confessed, "I'm all alone." He turned away, leaving her in the silence of her thoughts, the weight of his absence heavy in the air. What if we hadn't caught it in time? The thought sends a chill down my spine. Both mother and child, lost forever in a moment of negligence. Can you imagine the weight of that loss? The heartache that would ripple through their lives? It's unbearable to think about. He shifted in his chair, the confident grin slipping away for the first time, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension, as if everyone was waiting for the inevitable storm to break. For the very first time, a spark ignited within her, a flicker of hope, as if someone truly believed in her. The weight of doubt began to lift, replaced by a rush of emotion that surged through her veins. The judge reclined in his chair, a heavy silence enveloping the room as he processed the nurse's testimony, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a storm about to break. Then he turned his gaze toward him, not as a mere defendant anymore, but as a man laid bare, vulnerable and raw. "Is there anything you'd like to share in reaction to this testimony? What do you have to say for yourself?" The judge inquired, his voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of tension. He paused, his lips parted as if to speak, yet silence enveloped him like a heavy shroud. "You have to deny it all," his lawyer hissed, eyes wide with urgency. "You can't let them pin this on you." Yet, the scars remained, a testament to the turmoil that had unfolded. The courtroom was enveloped in a heavy silence, a stillness that seemed to pulse with unspoken words, each heartbeat echoing louder than a scream. His silence spoke volumes, heavy with unspoken words and unexpressed feelings. "Gloria," the judge said, his voice steady yet laced with an unspoken weight, as he turned to face her, the tension in the room palpable. "Please, go ahead and share your thoughts. I'm eager to hear what you have to say." And in that instant, everything changed. The air crackled with tension, as if the very fabric of reality had been torn apart. Eyes locked, hearts raced, and the world around them faded into a blur. It was a moment heavy with unspoken words, a silent acknowledgement that nothing would ever be the same again. Outside the courtroom, during the tense recess, he moved toward her, attempting to appear nonchalant, but the weight of the moment hung heavily between them. "It doesn't have to be this intense," he said, his voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of concern. She turned to him, her gaze piercing, and said, "This isn't drama. It's the weight of consequence, heavy and undeniable." He blinked, taken aback by the sharpness in her voice. Her voice was steady now, a newfound strength radiating from her. The fear that once clouded her eyes had vanished, replaced by a fierce determination. For the first time, he looked at her not as the woman he had abandoned, but as the fierce spirit she had become, one he could no longer bend to his will. In the tense atmosphere of the courtroom, the judge's voice cut through the silence as he prepared to unveil his preliminary findings, each word heavy with anticipation. She sat upright, her chin lifted defiantly, a fire igniting in her eyes. She hadn't won yet, but the tension in the room was palpable. Every eye was on her, and it was clear she had already seized the moment, claiming the lead in a way that sent whispers of anticipation rippling through the crowd. The atmosphere shifted as the second half of the hearing unfolded, whispers weaving through the room like a tense melody. Gloria stood, her gaze steady, as she summoned a final witness, an unexpected figure that sent ripples of intrigue through the crowd. The doors swung open, and in walked a woman, her office attire crisp and professional. She clutched a folder tightly, her knuckles white with tension. "I'm an employee at the financial firm," she said, her voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of tension. "You once had a joint account with the plaintiff." The weight of her words hung in the air, a silent challenge sparking between them. As she entered the room, he felt a sudden tension grip him, shifting uncomfortably in his seat, his heart racing with unspoken words. Gloria leaned in, her eyes narrowing with curiosity. "Can you tell me why you're here?" she pressed, her voice steady yet laced with tension. The woman took a breath, her expression unyielding. "I was subpoenaed," she replied, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Irregular activities were found in the account. The silence that followed was thick, charged with unspoken questions and the gravity of the situation. As she opened the folder, a heavy hush enveloped the room, tension crackling in the air. "These are the transfer logs," she announced, her voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of urgency. Eyes locked onto her, the weight of unspoken questions hung between them, each heartbeat amplifying the drama of the moment. With a tremor in her voice, she revealed the betrayal that had unfolded just days before his departure. He had stealthily siphoned their shared savings, diverting the funds into a private account hidden behind a name that was not his own. Even more unsettling, a sum of money had mysteriously found its way into an account that belonged to another woman, one he was now seeing. The implications hung heavy in the air, thick with tension and unspoken questions. He funneled the family funds away, leaving her with nothing, the witness declared, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. He parted his lips, ready to voice his thoughts, but his lawyer's hand brushed against his arm, a subtle plea for silence that hung heavy in the air. The judge leaned forward, his fingers steepled, his gaze piercing. "Do you deny these transactions?" he demanded, the weight of his words hanging in the air, thick with tension. The defendant remained silent, the weight of the moment hanging heavily in the air. His silence screamed louder than any denial could ever hope to. The air in the courtroom crackled with tension, each heartbeat echoing like a drum. Whispers danced between the spectators, their eyes darting from the judge to the defendant, each face a canvas of anxiety and anticipation. "What will happen next?" one murmured, barely above a whisper, as the weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. What unfolded next was a gripping revelation of how he had twisted the threads of finance to his advantage. "Listen closely," Gloria said, her voice steady yet charged with an undercurrent of tension. "Every transaction, every dollar, let me take you through it. Rent money? Redirected. Hospital bills? Ignored. And those credit cards? Maxed out in my name." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in, her eyes searching for understanding, for a flicker of recognition in the faces around her. As each item was laid before him, the judge's expression grew increasingly stern, a storm brewing behind his eyes. "You have responsibilities to her and to the life that's yet to come," he declared, his voice heavy with conviction. "But instead, you crafted a daring plan for your own escape." The defendant sat there, a mask of calmness, yet his fingers clutched the pen with a fierce intensity. His jaw clenched, betraying the storm brewing within him, as if the very walls of the room were inching closer, suffocating him in silence. Gloria took a deep breath, her voice steady yet charged with intensity. "Let me be clear," she declared. This is not a case of emotional misalignment or an incompatible marriage. The weight of her words hung in the air, a palpable tension that demanded attention. This is a deliberate act of leaving behind. This is an act of financial sabotage. And above all, here stands a man, stubborn and defiant, who turns his back on the very life he played a part in bringing into existence. The judge nodded, her eyes piercing with an intensity that demanded attention. Thank you, counselor. Your words resonate deeply within me, stirring emotions I thought were long buried. I appreciate your guidance more than I can express. The opposing lawyer attempted a brief rebuttal, but it was too late. The damage had already been done, leaving a palpable tension in the air. For the first time, the courtroom buzzed with tension, each breath heavy with the weight of betrayal. Whispers filled the air, not merely of cruelty, but of a chilling, calculated scheme to vanish without a trace, leaving behind a trail of shattered trust and raw emotion. The story had taken a dramatic turn. Now, he stood before them, not merely facing the judge and jury, but grappling with the weight of every gaze that had once trusted his tale. As the judge rose to announce the temporary ruling, a heavy silence enveloped the courtroom, tension hanging thick in the air. He took a deep breath, his voice steady yet charged with intensity. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "let's consider the undeniable strength of the evidence before us." The witness testimonies align perfectly, painting a vivid picture of the events that transpired. And the timeline of abandonment? It is as clear as day. His eyes scanned the room, searching for any flicker of doubt. He fixed his gaze on the defendant, his voice steady yet charged with intensity. "This court finds your conduct not just irresponsible," he declared, "but negligent on both moral and legal grounds." The weight of his words hung in the air, a palpable tension enveloping the room. As the silence stretched on, it wrapped around them like a heavy blanket, thick with unspoken words and lingering tension. The words lingered, heavy and oppressive, as if they were a burden no one had the courage to lift. The man who had once ridiculed her, who had vanished without a trace, now sat there, paralyzed, as his bravado shattered with every word that echoed from the bench. "Your Honor, I must insist," the lawyer interjected, his voice trembling with urgency. "This evidence is crucial." The judge's gaze hardened, the weight of the courtroom pressing down on everyone present. "Enough," he declared, his voice echoing like thunder, silencing the murmurs that rippled through the audience. Tension hung thick and he handed over full temporary custody to the mother, ensuring immediate child support that would reach back to the moment of abandonment. Tension hung in the air as he ordered an investigation into his financial concealment, the specter of possible fraud looming large over the proceedings. "You will not walk away from your child," the judge declared, his voice unwavering, each word heavy with authority. "Not here, not in this courtroom." The woman blinked, her eyes shimmering as she fought to contain the swell of emotion rising within her. It wasn't sadness that threatened to spill over, but a profound sense of justice that filled her heart to the brim. The silence of this moment was deafening. It lacked any sense of drama. Silence hung in the air, heavy and resolute, as if the world itself held its breath, waiting for the inevitable to unfold. And that intensified the impact beyond measure. As the gavel struck, signaling the end of the day's proceedings, the defendant turned away, his back a silent wall between them, leaving her heart heavy with unspoken words. He simply couldn't bring himself to do it. Now, he found himself gasping for air, overwhelmed by the weight of his choices. 2 weeks later, the final hearing arrived, tension hanging thick in the air. She stepped in wearing that same blazer, her chin lifted defiantly, radiating an air of newfound confidence. Hope stood there, her heart racing, bright-eyed and calm, as she leaned on her friend for support. The tension in the room was palpable as she faced the judge once more, every moment heavy with unspoken words and emotions swirling around them. This time, her hands were steady, a calm resolve coursing through her veins. She felt the weight of the truth hanging in the air, its echoes lingering between them, unspoken yet undeniable. Only the weight of confirmation hung in the air, thick with unspoken words and lingering tension. The judge leaned back in his chair, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. He cleared his throat, his voice steady yet filled with gravity as he announced, I hereby grant permanent, full custody. A pause hung, thick with tension, before he continued, and long-term child support will be mandated, along with restitution for the medical expenses that were unjustly neglected. The room held its breath, emotions swirling like a storm, each word echoing the stakes of the decision made. This ruling signifies something deeper than mere legality, the judge declared, his voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of gravity. It embodies the essence of justice, a force that demands to be acknowledged and felt deeply. The court's decree left him in silence, a heavy weight pressing down on his heart, forbidding any contact until he mustered the courage to seek supervised visitation, all under the watchful eyes of the law. His lawyer stood there, words caught in his throat, the silence stretching between them like a taut wire, heavy with unspoken tension. He appeared frilier, his frame diminished, as if the weight of the world had pressed down upon him, leaving him smaller than I remembered. His once unyielding arrogance crumbled, leaving behind a heavy silence filled with the weight of his shame. Outside, a cluster of reporters from a small local news outlet stood anxiously, their eyes darting with anticipation. They had seized upon this case, drawn in by its unusual legal implications, whispering among themselves, each eager to uncover the story that lay beneath the surface. She turned away, her lips sealed tight, the silence heavy between them. I had to say it, she insisted, her voice trembling with the weight of her words. It was the only thing that could change everything. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension, each heartbeat echoing the gravity of the moment. As she descended the courthouse steps, the warm breeze brushed against her face, and a gentle smile spread across her lips, unrestrained and full of life. She had triumphed in a way that left everyone breathless. She had found her way back to herself, a fierce determination igniting within her. The shadows of doubt that once clouded her mind began to dissipate, replaced by a vibrant clarity. Each breath she took was a declaration of her strength, a promise to never lose sight of who she truly was. The journey had been tumultuous, filled with heartache and struggle, but now, standing, weeks dragged on, silence enveloping her like a heavy fog, each day stretching longer than the last as she waited, heart pounding, for a word from him. Yet, through the whispers of mutual acquaintances, she discovered the heart-wrenching news. He had lost his job. The scandal of the court case sent shockwaves through his professional life, each whisper and rumor cutting deeper than the last. "Can you believe it?" someone gasped, eyes wide with disbelief. How could he let it come to this? The tension in the air was palpable, thick with unspoken fears and mounting pressure. He felt the weight of their stares, the judgment hanging like a storm cloud overhead, ready to burst. "I never thought it would end like this," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, a mix of regret and anger swirling within him. The firm recoiled at the thought of the damaging headlines that could tarnish their reputation. His new girlfriend, the one who had taken the siphoned funds, vanished from his life just moments after the hearing, leaving a void filled with confusion and betrayal. The account was frozen, leaving a chilling silence in the air as uncertainty gripped the room. What would happen next? The weight of the moment hung heavy, each heartbeat echoing the tension that filled the space. The money is gone, vanished into thin air, leaving behind a hollow ache in the chest. Where did it all go? The questions swirl like a tempest, each one more urgent than the last. Desperation clings to the air, thick and suffocating, as the reality sinks in. What now? The silence screams louder than any words could. Once, he had reveled in the illusion of control, weaving the threads of his life with deft precision. But now, as he stood amidst the chaos, the weight of his own story slipped through his fingers, leaving him vulnerable and exposed. "How did it come to this?" he whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and despair. The shadows of his past loomed large, and the silence around him echoed with unspoken truths, each moment heavy with the drama of his unraveling fate. He dispatched a message via his lawyer, terse and devoid of warmth, laced with feeble apologies that barely scratched the surface of his remorse. "I never imagined it would escalate to this point," he penned, his heart heavy with disbelief. Silence hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. She simply stared, her lips pressed together, as if the words she held were too fragile to set free. One evening, as she reached for her groceries, her gaze caught him across the parking lot. Her heart raced, a mix of surprise and longing flooding her senses. Is that really him? She whispered to herself, the world around her fading into a blur. The air thickened with unspoken words, and she felt an undeniable pull, as if fate had orchestrated this moment just for them. He stood there, a shadow of his former self, the weight of the world etched into every line on his face. I never thought it would come to this, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, filled with a deep, aching sorrow. Life has a way of stealing your youth, doesn't it? In that fleeting moment, their gazes locked, a silent storm brewing between them. He parted his lips, a flicker of words dancing on the tip of his tongue, but then hesitated, sealing his silence once more. Silence hung heavy in the air, a palpable weight that pressed down on them. No words came, only the unspoken tension that crackled between their gazes. His lips remained pressed together, devoid of any hint of a smirk. Keep the attitude in check. Nothing but silence hung in the air, thick and heavy, as if the world itself held its breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the stillness. And in that moment, her heart raced as the truth washed over her, a revelation that shifted everything she thought she knew. The power had shifted, and there was no turning back. The air crackled with tension, each heartbeat echoing the weight of the change. It was a moment heavy with unspoken words, a drama unfolding in the silence that followed. Emotions swirled like a tempest, leaving no one untouched by the gravity of what had just transpired. Not due to the way she had shattered him, but because she had risen anew, stronger and more vibrant than before. I don't need your apology, she said, her voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of hurt. The air between them crackled with unspoken words, each one heavy with the weight of their shared past. She turned away, her heart pounding, as the silence stretched, filled with the tension of unresolved emotions. She scoffed at the thought of his money, her eyes blazing with defiance. What she possessed now was infinitely more valuable: peace, clarity, and a daughter who would flourish, never questioning the unwavering strength of her mother. Life after the verdict hung heavy in the air, devoid of any sense of triumph. It was as if a long-held breath burst forth, escaping after an eternity submerged, the rush of air igniting a spark of life within. The paperwork was finalized, and the financial accounts were enforced by court order. A new chapter began, heavy with unspoken words and the weight of what had come before. Each signature felt like a farewell, a door closing behind them, yet the air crackled with the promise of what lay ahead. Hope mingled with uncertainty, and the silence was thick with emotion, as if the very walls held their breath, waiting for the first step into the unknown. She had stopped waking up, her heart racing, hoping to see his name light up her screen. She held her gaze steady, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them when his name slipped into the air. Her mornings now unfolded with sweet lullabies and the joyful sound of baby giggles, replacing the tension and silence that once filled the air. She glanced around her small apartment, a space that remained humble yet now radiated a serene tranquility. It was a realization that true peace didn't hinge on riches. All it craves is safety. Hope's smile began to blossom, a flicker of light breaking through the shadows that had once clouded her heart. And so she had, her heart heavy with the weight of unspoken words. "Mom, can we go to the swings?" her daughter asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. The sunlight danced through the leaves above them, casting playful shadows on the ground. "Of course, sweetheart," she replied, her heart swelling with joy as they made their way to the laughter-filled playground. Just listen to all that happiness. Now, other mothers approached her, their voices weaving through the air, each word heavy with unspoken stories and shared experiences. She was so much more than the girl who had been abandoned. She was the woman who chose to remain, her heart anchored in the storm of uncertainty, who dared to clash in the heat of battle, who persevered through the storm. With a spark igniting within her, she picked up the pen once more, not merely to fill the pages of a blog, but to pour her heart out for herself. In the quiet moments, when doubt lingers like a shadow, stories unfold, essays that breathe life into the struggle of rebuilding. It's a journey marked by whispers of disbelief, Yet within that solitude, a fierce determination ignites. Each small reflection reveals the raw emotion of standing firm when the world questions your very foundation, but you alone know its strength. "I never thought I'd be here," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and pride. "Every word I spoke, every choice I made, it all led me to this moment." She paused, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I did this, alone, and it's beautiful." With a spark of hope igniting within her, she eagerly enrolled in an online business course, the small grant from a women's initiative for single mothers serving as her lifeline. The weight of her responsibilities pressed down, but this opportunity felt like a door opening to a brighter future. At first, the modules felt like an insurmountable challenge, a mountain looming over her as she juggled diapers and feedings. Yet, through the chaos, a fierce determination burned within her. Quitting was never an option she entertained. With each class she completed, it was as if a fragment of her true self was being pieced back together, igniting a flicker of hope within her heart. Under the dim glow of her laptop screen, she poured her heart into late-night study sessions, each keystroke a whisper of her dreams. "What if I could blend my old passions with this new chapter?" she mused, her mind racing with possibilities. The excitement bubbled within her, igniting a fire that had long been dormant. This could be it, she thought, her pulse quickening as visions of her future danced before her eyes. A humble service, a lifeline for mothers navigating the stormy seas of legal battles. It provided not just guidance and templates, but a warm embrace of emotional support, a beacon of hope in their darkest hours. Whispers fluttered through the online parenting groups, each message charged with urgency and anticipation. Once silenced, her voice now surged forth, a powerful resource that demanded to be heard. In just a few months, clients began to reach out from every corner of the state, their voices filled with hope and anticipation. "You were my strength when I faced the judge," one woman confessed, her voice trembling with gratitude. Another message came through, and suddenly, the weight of solitude lifted as I immersed myself in your story. What started as a fight for survival had transformed into a quest for meaning. As she mended her own wounds, she reached out, guiding others on their journeys to find solace and strength. "You can do this," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, as she held their hands tightly, igniting a spark of hope in their hearts. Her past wasn't just a scar, it was a guiding light, illuminating the path for others to escape the shadows, one deliberate step at a time. Hope took her first steps, each one a tiny wobble, a delicate dance of curiosity and awe. "Look at me," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I can do it." The world around her seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with the promise of new adventures. Her heart raced, a symphony of emotions playing in her chest as she ventured forth, each step a bold declaration of her spirit. "Look at me," she exclaimed, clapping her hands with glee as she navigated through the room, her tiny fingers reaching out, her eyes sparkling with wonder. "I found it. I really found it." As she watched her daughter blossom, a wave of joy surged within her, a feeling so profound that no court ruling, no amount of money, and no man could ever hope to replicate it. The laughter, the small victories, the tender moments, they filled her heart with an emotion that transcended all else, a drama unfolding in the quiet corners of their lives. With each giggle and every babbled word, she felt the pulse of life around her, vibrant and alive, a testament to the beauty of resilience and growth. The girl who once sat on the kitchen floor, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clutched the shredded papers, now radiated joy. She sprawled on a picnic blanket, laughter bubbling up as she held her daughter close, both basking in the warmth of the sun. The neighbors couldn't help but feel the shift in the air. Once rivals, her friends now looked at her with admiration. Even her family, who had kept their distance during the darkest days, started to reach out once more. Their apologies were soft, yet filled with genuine remorse. She opened her arms to them, but there was a hesitation in her gaze, a flicker of doubt that spoke volumes. It was the kind of wariness born from experience, from the painful realization that not all who witness your struggles are there to lift you back up. Yet, she never clung to resentment. Bitterness had no place in her heart any longer. It was a weight she could no longer bear. Once, her life was a muted canvas, stifled by silence and the weight of control. But now, it burst forth with laughter that danced in the air, melodies that wrapped around her like a warm embrace, and the soft rustle of pages turning. Each one a story waiting to be told, whether from baby books or legal guides, each moment alive with possibility. Months later, a crisp envelope slipped through the mail slot, its presence heavy with unspoken words. The handwriting on the front struck a chord within me, a haunting familiarity that sent shivers down my spine. Her gaze lingered on it, a whirlwind of thoughts swirling in her mind, as she hesitated, heart racing, before finally daring to open it. Inside lay a handwritten letter, its delicate script whispering secrets of the heart. It came from him, the weight of it hanging in the air, thick with unspoken words and lingering glances. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "It's just, everything has been so overwhelming. I didn't mean to hurt you. It's the stress, the confusion, and the fear that have been clouding my mind." His eyes darted away, unable to meet hers, as if the weight of his emotions was too heavy to bear. He poured his heart onto the page, confessing that he had lost himself in the shadows of his own despair. With a tremor in his voice, he dared to hope that one day, she might find the courage to tell Hope of the love he once held so dearly. "Maybe we both made mistakes," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of unspoken regrets. Her eyes scanned the letter once, then again and again, each word sinking deeper into her heart, stirring a tempest of feelings within her. Her expression was a mask, betraying nothing beneath the surface. With a heavy heart, she set the letter down on the table, her fingers lingering on its surface. A moment later, she grasped it again, the weight of its words pulling her toward the flickering flames of the fireplace. The flame leapt to life, dancing eagerly as it consumed the kindling, crackling with a fierce intensity that filled the air with a palpable tension. She stood there, eyes fixed on the flames as they danced hungrily around the edges of the paper. "Goodbye," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. The corners curled inwards, darkening, as if the very essence of her thoughts was being consumed. "You won't be missed," she added, a bittersweet smile tugging at her lips, even as the last remnants flickered away into nothingness. Her eyes held no trace of anger. Instead, they radiated a piercing clarity that cut through the tension in the room. In that moment, she understood that forgiveness didn't need words to take root. It demanded to be set free. And that was precisely what this moment embodied. With a sigh, she pivoted from the flickering flames, her gaze landing on Hope. The little one was sprawled on the rug, her tiny hands fumbling with the blocks, each clumsy attempt met with a burst of delighted laughter. "Come here, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice trembling with warmth as she gently lifted her into her arms, cradling her close. Oh, this is only the beginning. Years slipped by, and her tale transformed into something far deeper than mere survival. It transformed into a voice that resonated through workshops, support groups, and community centers, stirring emotions and igniting conversations. She spoke, her voice trembling with the weight of unspoken sorrows, not to linger in the shadows of pain, but to illuminate the vibrant life that thrived beyond its grasp. Hope blossomed into a vibrant, introspective child, her curious eyes sparkling with wonder as she clutched her beloved books tightly, each page a doorway to new adventures. "Tell me again about the day I was born," she would plead, her eyes wide with anticipation. Her mother would smile softly, the warmth of nostalgia enveloping her. "Ah, my dear, it was not a tale of courts or cruelty," she would begin, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "It was a story of strength, of resilience, and of the fierce love that welcomed you into this world. You came to me in the midst of a tempest," she would say, her voice trembling with the weight of the memory. "And somehow, you guided me back to the light." Her business blossomed, thriving in ways she had only dreamed of. As she stepped inside, a comforting warmth enveloped her, wrapping around her like a soft embrace, grounding her in a sense of stability she had longed for. She stood before the mailbox, her heart steady, no longer haunted by the shadows of uncertainty. The courtroom doors loomed ahead, But instead of dread, a fierce determination ignited within her. She was ready to face whatever lay beyond. Instead, she embraced each new chapter with a serene confidence, as if she had already confronted her deepest fears and pinned her escape from the shadows. She turned away from the spotlight, her heart heavy yet resolute. Recognition was a fleeting shadow, and she had long since learned to embrace the quiet strength within her. It was the unspoken moments, the raw emotions that fueled her spirit, not the applause of the crowd. She stood there, her heart racing, the silence wrapping around her like a heavy cloak. Applause? No, that wasn't what she sought. It was the understanding in their eyes, the unspoken connection, that mattered most. All she needed was precisely what she possessed: her daughter, her dignity, and the profound understanding that the woman he once attempted to shatter had transformed into someone beyond his grasp, even in the echoes of memory.